I'm Jemima Hunt, and I head up the writers' practice, which has been around as an agency for 6 years and was set up as a manuscript consultancy by my colleague Henry Sutton. And we have two roles at the writers' practice. We do editorial consultancy on manuscripts and a bit of film script work. And then also I take on probably at most two new writers a year. We're very hands-on. I work with other co-agents for TV and film and foreign rights. And we're always looking for new projects and new books to launch. My day-to-day role at the writers' practice really involves everything from looking at the manuscripts when they come in. I work editorially with my writers for between 3 months to, say, a year, possibly. Drafts come back to me, I look at them, we discuss revisions. At the same time, I'm talking to publishers about what they're looking for, about the projects I've got coming up. I'm then working very closely with the film and TV agents to see how that's going. I've got various things which have been optioned. I'm talking to the film director, I'm talking about where the script is, I'm talking about what actors they've approached. I mean, so it's literally everything from words on the page through to the deal, through to what could possibly be happening, we hope, in a year's time if we get finance for a project to be filmed. My top tips really would be to, which is what everyone says, read, and then write to your best ability, because the words just have to sing, and story is obviously very, very important. But actually the quality of the writing and the amount of work that's gone into redrafting and revision can never actually be too much. So obviously it's about taste. I take on certain projects and I can only get these projects past certain publishers who will say to me very openly and honestly, oh, I took on a book last week which is slightly similar, or I'm not in the mood for something with such a dark ending. So be prepared for the level of subjectivity involved in us responding to your work and why certain readers want to read certain books. Because what I always say is I'm a reader first. So I'm always responding to a project, responding to a manuscript as a reader, and whether it's something that I want to then spend, the next however many years reading and working with. I have a slightly different background to many agents because I'm a writer. So I began my career as a journalist, and I went off to New York and I worked on magazines out there. I then came back and I wrote 2 novels and had a fantastic agent myself. So sort of got into the whole notion of what agenting is from being very well agented. And through that started teaching some creative writing, and it was when I discovered 2 really fantastic writers, an Afghan writer called Aziz Hakimi and at the time, fiction writer Lucy Brownlee, on an MA, that it occurred to me that actually I wasn't just going to pass on these writers to another agent, I was going to then start agenting myself. So really it was through finding 2 great writers and just thinking this is actually something that I was now going to do myself, and then having this great friend who had set up the writers' practice who I then joined forces with. I think, as with any agency or any agent, really it's just if something strikes you as being the book you want to work with at the time. So I think what's interesting about non-fiction is you can go out and search for projects, which I do quite actively, because one can think, as I have done, I really want to do a memoir about surf, and I will then go, because I've got a sort of journalistic background, and find that book. With fiction, you just have to wait for things to come to you, and I think fiction is harder to find. Great books that you really enjoy, novels, but again, for me, there always has to be a sort of purpose to why one would want to read that book at that time. Working with authors really goes from that initial introduction, that initial meeting. You read something, you think, yes, this is great. So you then decide that you will talk to the author, and you either ring them up or you hopefully have coffee or lunch, and you have to, not dissimilar to today, not unlike today, one has to think, can I work with this person? because there's a sort of intimacy and also an investment involved. So you have to think, is this someone I can get along with? And really you go from there. So you start trying to be sympathetic to the text and working alongside the author on the words, hoping that they respond to your comments, hoping the next draft that comes in is what you hope is as good as it should be, as one needs it to be. And then obviously all the hand-holding through sending it out to publishers, the rejections, then finding a publisher, then what you do once that book is out there, how you keep trying to find new outlets, new rights to exploit, whether it's ringing up journalistic friends trying to get stuff in the newspapers, or just banging on doors a lot, being the first port of call, really. An amazing cross-section, really. I think that's what's always so interesting about meeting writers. I mean, there's definitely just the variety of stories, and also the way in which authors inhabit their characters. So the way in which you're almost talking about real life people, it's this immediate entree into someone else's world, which feels like a privilege. Well, it's a combination of things. One always obviously hopes that you're going to find some fantastic book and author that you're going to take on, and that has happened to me in the past. I have a couple of authors that I've met that I have picked up through these sorts of events. But I think also just to actually hear from writers what they feel is important, and obviously it's a two-way process. It feels to me very important that we're also having this conversation with writers, so that we can be useful, because actually we're all part of the same community and we're all trying to do the same thing. And I always say, look, I'm just the next person in the kind of filter system, and if I'm the right person, then great, but I'm not then going to have to fight your corner, to find a publisher. So we'll have to frame and pitch your book and do all the same things that you're doing now. So it's just sort of part of the process. It's been great. I mean, I think actually people showing up, and, I've even been given hard copies of work, and just told about, stories which resonate on different levels is really exciting. I would. I mean, I think what's changed in the last 20 years in terms of writing is the way in which there are these now opportunities and outlets and structures within which you can access people in the industry, which didn't used to exist. So I think it's always nerve-wracking having to pitch your work, but it's part of the process, and the more you do it, the better you'll become at it. And actually you have to make yourself vulnerable, but at the same time, in the same way that the exercise of actually just writing down in a paragraph what your story is about will actually perhaps flag up issues with the story. Similarly, as you start talking about your story, perhaps you'll realise that, it's not yet quite there, or getting a reaction from people makes you rethink it, or, also makes you have to kind of defend your work, which is important.